Why was everyone staring at her? Maybe it was the silence she carried, that quiet, unsettling kind of calm that made people wonder what she knew. Or maybe it was the pin, that small, black metal raven resting against her blazer collar, gleaming faintly under the tired ceiling lights. The ceiling fans rotated lazily in the Department of Veterans Affairs office in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. The August heat outside pressed against the tinted glass like something alive, the air heavy enough to taste. Inside, recycled air hummed through dusty vents, carrying the faint scent of old furniture and disinfectant, the universal smell of every government building in America. Jennifer Hayes sat alone in the far corner of the waiting room. Her posture was straight, not rigid, just deliberate, the way people sit when they've spent decades being evaluated by the posture of others. 52 years old, civilian clothes that blended in too well, gray blazer, black slacks, hair pulled tight in a bun that didn't ask for compliments. And that pin, no larger than a quarter. A raven with its wings folded, perched on a compass rose carved with markings no one recognized. Around it, a ring of symbols that didn't match any military insignia anyone had ever seen. She didn't fidget. She didn't look up. Her eyes traced the questions on the VA form in front of her, handwriting so controlled it almost looked mechanical. She had been postponing this appointment for 7 months, but her new address made it mandatory. There was no avoiding the bureaucracy forever. Across the waiting room, 2 younger veterans were engaged in that eternal ritual, swapping deployment stories like poker hands. Tyler Morgan, early 30s, Army Ranger tattoo still sharp on his neck. Loud voice, forced confidence. His friend Jason Rivers, ex-Navy corpsman, nodded in rhythm, throwing in a chuckle here and there. Tyler was in the middle of his favorite line, the kind that always came out rehearsed. 19 months in Kandahar province, saw more combat there than some see in 3 tours combined. A few people looked up, some nodded, others smirked. Jennifer didn't move. The VA waiting room was its own battlefield where soldiers traded stories instead of bullets. Pride was currency, pain was proof, and silence was suspicious. "Excuse me," a young woman said softly, approaching Jennifer with an ID card in hand. "You dropped this." Jennifer looked up, calm eyes, tired smile. "Thank you," she said, taking the card and tucking it neatly back into her folder. The woman lingered for a second. Her gaze dropped to the small raven pin. "That's beautiful. Is it a family piece or something?" "Something like that," Jennifer replied. The smile didn't reach her eyes. Across the room, Tyler caught the exchange. His expression shifted, curiosity first, then that thin edge of mockery that often hides insecurity. He elbowed Jason. "Hey, check that out." His chin tilted toward Jennifer. "Looks like someone's showing off a decoration they bought online." Jason frowned. "What is it?" "No idea. Some fake special ops thing maybe. You see that crap all the time." He spoke louder now, the words meant to carry. "People wearing medals they didn't earn." Jennifer's pen didn't stop moving. The tip glided across the form, steady and exact. But the air had changed. The others in the waiting room had noticed. Some pretended not to. Others leaned forward, curiosity sharpening like knives. "I think it looks real," the young woman murmured, almost apologetic. "Everything looks real if you don't know what you're looking at," Tyler shot back, and this time he stood. Jason sighed. "Man, don't." But Tyler was already walking toward Jennifer, his boots thudding against the cheap tile. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, polite tone, not friendly. "That pin you're wearing, what unit issued it?" Jennifer looked up slowly, her expression neutral. "It wasn't issued by a unit." "Right," Tyler said, smirking. "So what is it then? Some kind of souvenir, commemorative merch?" "It's a service recognition," Jennifer replied, simple, unemotional. "Service recognition for what?" His tone sharpened. "I've been around military insignia my whole life, and I've never seen anything like that." "That's not surprising," Jennifer said, her voice still even. It's not widely distributed. Jason shifted uneasily. Come on, man, just let it go. But Tyler wasn't listening. He needed this, the control, the validation. Something inside him was begging to prove he still mattered. Look, he said, voice louder now, I'm not trying to be rude, but there's a real problem with stolen valor. People walk around pretending they're heroes. It's disgusting. The waiting room fell silent. Even the fans seemed to hesitate mid-turn. Jennifer placed her pen down. You're entitled to your opinion, she said. So you won't tell me what it represents. I don't owe you an explanation. If it's real, Tyler pressed, you shouldn't have any trouble explaining it. She looked up, finally meeting his gaze. Her voice dropped to something colder, quieter. Some service can't be explained. An older man, late 70s, wearing a faded Korean war cap, spoke from across the room. Son, he said gently, maybe let this one go. With respect, sir, Tyler replied, though his tone softened only slightly. This is between me and her. Jennifer closed her folder and stood. She was shorter than him by half a head, but somehow she looked taller. That pin was awarded for specific service, she said. That's all you need to understand. But you won't specify what service, he pushed. No, Jennifer said, I won't. Because it's fake. She blinked once, because it's classified. A small ripple of whispers moved through the room. Tyler laughed. That's convenient. Claim it's classified so you don't have to prove anything. Jennifer stepped past him toward the reception desk. Believe what you like. But he followed. You know what bothers me most? His voice rose again, anger covering something brittle underneath. People who wear medals they didn't earn. It disrespects everyone who served with integrity. Jennifer stopped, turned. The entire room froze. I have never, she said quietly, worn anything I didn't earn. Then prove it, he challenged. Tell me what it means. Before she could answer, the office door opened. Jennifer Hayes, a coordinator, called. That's me, Jennifer replied, relief flickering in her eyes. But as she walked away, Tyler called after her. You might want to remember stolen valor's a federal crime. Jennifer paused at the doorway. She looked back, not angry, not defensive, just tired. I've never stolen anything in my life, she said softly, especially not honor. And then she was gone. The door clicked shut, and the waiting room exhaled all at once. Inside the administrative office, the hum of an old air conditioner filled the silence. Rachel Thompson, VA coordinator, smiled awkwardly as she gestured to a seat. Rough crowd today, she said. Some folks get real touchy about recognition. Jennifer sat down, understandable. Rachel opened her computer, her eyes narrowed slightly. Huh. Jennifer waited. I've been doing this 11 years, Rachel said slowly, and I've never seen this level of redaction in a veteran's file. Almost your entire service record is classified. No unit assignments, no deployments, no commendations, nothing. That's accurate, Jennifer said calmly. How is that possible? Even special ops have partial records. Some operations, Jennifer said, are more sensitive than others. Rachel studied her for a moment. That pin out there, I saw it caused a stir. Is that related to whatever's missing in your record? Jennifer looked down at her hands. There were faint scars across her knuckles, thin white lines that told their own story. It is. Rachel hesitated. I won't pry, she said finally, printing out a form. Sign here and here. Your health care will activate within 72 hours. Jennifer nodded, signed the papers with precise strokes. Thank you. As Rachel gathered the forms, she said quietly, whatever you did, whoever you worked for, they went to a lot of trouble to protect your identity. That tells me something. Jennifer didn't answer. There was nothing to say. 15 minutes later, she walked back into the waiting room. Tyler was still there, sitting with his arms crossed, still trying to convince others he'd done the right thing. "Ma'am," he called out as she passed. "Wait." She stopped, turned. I want to understand," he said. "You said 28 years of service." Jennifer nodded once. "How old are you?" "Old enough to know when to walk away," she said. "If you served 28 years, why are your records classified? Women weren't allowed in direct action special operations until 2013. Officially." "Officially," she repeated, and let the word hang in the air. The old veteran chuckled softly. "Son, you're walking into deep water." Tyler frowned. "I'm just asking questions. If someone going to wear a medal no one recognizes, they should be able to back it up." "And I told you," Jennifer said, "it represents service I can't discuss. That should be enough." "It's not for me." The young woman who had returned Jennifer's ID earlier was recording on her phone now. Her expression conflicted between curiosity and awe. Jason muttered, "Tyler, man, stop. You've made your point." Tyler opened his mouth again, but another voice cut through the room. "What's insulting," the voice said, deep and commanding, "is watching a ranger forget his situational awareness." Every head turned. A man stood at the entrance, mid-60s, gray hair cropped short, posture straight as a parade rest. Civilian clothes, but everything about him screamed command. He walked forward, steady, unhurried. Tyler straightened instinctively, his training kicking in before his mind caught up. "Sir, I was just trying to protect the integrity of military." The man ignored him. His eyes found Jennifer. They stopped fixed on the small pin on her collar. His expression shifted, surprise, then recognition, then something deeper. He came to attention, and slowly, with perfect precision, rendered a salute. Jennifer hesitated, then returned it, sharp, professional, reflexive. When the man spoke again, his voice softened. "General David Thornton, retired." The waiting room went dead silent. He turned to the others. "That pin," he said, "isn't fake. It's called the Obsidian Raven. It's awarded to operatives who served in programs that never officially existed." Tyler blinked. "I've never heard of it." "You weren't supposed to," Thornton said. "Only 19 people ever received it. 15 are dead. One's deep cover, one's in a hospital, one's missing." He looked at Jennifer. "And one is standing right here." No one spoke. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Thornton's voice lowered. "You all talk about honor. She carried it alone for 16 years in places that don't appear on any map. She doesn't owe you an explanation. None of us do." Jennifer didn't move. Her hands were still, but her eyes for the first time that day softened. Not pride, not relief, just quiet understanding. Tyler swallowed hard. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, I didn't know." "Most people don't," Jennifer said. "That's by design." The young woman stopped recording. The old veteran leaned back, whispering, "Damn." And somewhere deep inside her chest, after years of silence, secrecy, and isolation, Jennifer Hayes felt something she hadn't in a long time. Not victory, not vindication, but the faint, fragile return of peace. How does someone disappear without ever leaving the country? Jennifer had asked herself that once, years before she understood the answer. That night after the incident at the VA, she didn't go home immediately. She drove, aimless, silent, through Phoenix streets washed in amber streetlight and desert wind. Her car windows reflected the past like ghosts she'd never buried. Every turn of the wheel seemed to trace old paths she'd tried to forget. Her phone buzzed once, an unknown number. No message. She ignored it. By the time she reached the outskirts of the city, the stars were visible again, burning over the desert like memory itself, distant, untouchable, but still there. She parked off a dirt road and sat in the stillness. The voice of the general still echoed in her head. 15 dead, 1 deep cover, 1 missing, 1 standing right here. She had been the last one standing for years. And sometimes, that felt less like survival and more like a mistake. Her fingers brushed against the raven pin. Cold metal, heavy with names she'd never speak. The same pin had been placed in her hand 23 years earlier in a hangar with no markings, on a base that didn't exist. That was the first time she truly vanished. The year was 2001. The world hadn't yet changed, but the tremors had already started. Jennifer had been a reconnaissance analyst in the Air Force, sharp, unnoticed, precise. She wasn't built like most operatives. She didn't have the swagger, didn't crave medals. What she had was a kind of silence that made her dangerous. She listened, she noticed, and she remembered. Someone in Washington noticed that about her. She was transferred to a program that had no name, a joint intelligence initiative under the Defense Clandestine Service. On paper, she no longer existed. Her personnel file ended abruptly with a single word stamped in red, REASSIGNED. The first mission came 3 months later. A cargo route through North Africa had been compromised. A splinter group, ex-Soviet arms dealers and regional militias, was trafficking stolen surface-to-air missiles through Libyan corridors. The Pentagon needed eyes on the ground. But the ground was denied territory. That's when they sent her. She wasn't alone, not exactly. The team was small, 6 people, each from a different background, each erased from their own military branches. They were called consultants when anyone asked. The truth was more complicated. Her call sign was Raven 3. They inserted at dawn from a civilian transport, under diplomatic cover. The kind of mission that didn't exist until it was over. The kind where success meant no one ever found out. Their target was a supply warehouse outside Sabah, rumored to store stolen MANPADS intended for a terrorist cell in Mali. The plan was simple on paper. Infiltrate, photograph inventory, extract with coordinates for follow-up strike. But nothing about that desert was simple. The sun in the Sahara didn't rise, it detonated. She still remembered the sting of heat through her uniform, the distant whine of sand-laden wind cutting through the radio static. Her commanding officer, call sign Ghost Lead, moved beside her, voice low and calm. Raven 3, eyes up, convoy approaching from the west, civilians or cargo. She steadied her binoculars, a plume of dust in the distance, 2 trucks, 1 SUV. Markings burned off, looks military adapted but locally crude. Copy that, maintain low profile. They waited in silence, a silence that always carried weight before contact. Her heart didn't race, it never did, not anymore. The fear had burned out of her long before. They approached the compound that night. The warehouse was surrounded by wire fencing and armed sentries who looked barely out of their teens. Jennifer remembered the sound of her heartbeat matching the slow rhythm of her suppressed breathing. She was Overwatch, 2nd story, east corner. Her rifle rested steady against the rough concrete, the scope's reticle hovering over a patch of dirt where the nearest guard would pause every 12 seconds to light a cigarette. She counted 1, 2, 3. On 12 he appeared, and the soft click of her radio followed. Target 1 neutralized, she whispered. It wasn't heroism, it was math. Down below, Ghost Lead and Raven 5 breached the door. 2 bursts of static, muffled voices, a flash of light through the cracks, then silence again. Raven 3, the voice crackled through the earpiece, "You're up." She moved, down the staircase through the shadows. The smell of oil, sand, and something metallic filled the air. The interior of the warehouse looked like a museum of forgotten wars. Rusting crates marked in Cyrillic, sealed drums, torn maps of Africa spread across a table. She knelt beside a crate, pried it open. Inside, foam casing. 6 missile tubes, serial numbers defaced, but she recognized the make. 9K-38 Igla, heat-seeking, shoulder-fired Soviet-era. She photographed everything. Each click of the camera was another piece of a puzzle no one outside this room would ever see. "Intel confirmed," she whispered. "We have the birds." Copy came Ghost Lead's voice. Package complete, prepare exfil. But then came the sound that every operative dreads, the one that doesn't belong. A door hinge. Then another. Then the unmistakable click of a safety being released. The guard who'd left his post early, the cigarette still burning on the ground outside. Jennifer froze, then spun, her weapon raised just as the door burst open. 3 armed men. No uniforms, no hesitation. The first went down clean. The second fired wild, a spray of bullets cutting through the dust. The third reached the alarm switch and pressed it. The next 60 seconds were chaos. Gunfire, shouting, the sound of engines roaring outside. Jennifer ducked behind a metal crate, the impact of a round sparking inches from her cheek. Ghost Lead's voice thundered through the comms. Compromised. Extraction hot. She sprinted for the side exit, her movements instinctive, not conscious. Behind her, the warehouse erupted into fire, ammunition cooking off like popcorn in the heat. She hit the sand, rolled, came up running. The extraction vehicle skidded into view, an unmarked pickup, engine howling. She jumped into the back, gripping the roll bar as they tore through the desert night. Bullets stitched the sand behind them. One punched through the tailgate. Another tore past her ear. But they didn't stop. By dawn, they were gone, ghosts disappearing into the dunes. The report that reached Washington was 1 paragraph long. Mission concluded, objective confirmed, inventory neutralized via secondary detonation, casualties none, attribution unknown. Her name appeared nowhere, not even as a code. But a week later, a courier arrived at an unmarked office in Virginia. Inside a velvet-lined case sat a small, black pin shaped like a raven with folded wings. For those who work unseen, the card read. No signatures, no ceremony, no medals, just the pin. Jennifer had stared at it for a long time before placing it in a drawer. At the time, she thought it was just a token, something symbolic. She didn't realize it was a promise and a warning. Because after that first mission, she never went back to normal duty. She never went back at all. The next 2 years blurred into a series of flights that didn't exist, briefings conducted in rooms with no windows, missions signed only with initials. Each one darker, riskier, each one demanding a little more of her humanity in exchange for silence. In Mali, she intercepted arms traffickers disguised as UN relief contractors. In Chechnya, she extracted a double agent from a collapsing city under the cover of an earthquake. In Bogota, she sat across from a man who smiled as he handed her the location of a hostage camp, then killed himself before she could ask why. And each time when she came home to nothing. No parades, no medals, no names. Only the raven, waiting quietly in her locker. The memory faded as her eyes drifted back to the present, to the dashboard clock glowing in her parked car. 11:42 p.m. The desert wind whispered through the open window, carrying the smell of dust and distant rain. She thought about Tyler, about the look on his face when the general saluted her. He'd seen pride before, but what he'd seen in her wasn't pride, it was weight. The kind of weight you never set down. Her phone buzzed again, the same number. This time she answered. "Hayes," she said. A pause, then a familiar voice, low and steady. "Still wearing the pin?" She closed her eyes. "You shouldn't be calling this line." "I don't have another one left," the voice replied. "We need to talk, it's about Raven Protocol." The desert outside her windshield stretched endlessly, dark, vast and silent. "I'm not active anymore," she said. "I know," he answered, "but one of the missing ravens isn't missing anymore. They just surfaced in Istanbul." Jennifer's breath caught soft, sharp, involuntary. "Who?" she whispered. Another pause, then, "You're not going to like the answer." The line went dead. She sat there for a long time, staring at the phone, her pulse steady but her mind racing. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall, hitting the car roof like faint, deliberate footsteps. She reached into her coat pocket and felt the cool edge of the pin. It had always been just a memory. Until tonight. The raven had stirred again. That night she didn't sleep. And for the first time in years, she wasn't just remembering the past, she was being pulled back into it. Some ghosts, she thought, don't stay buried. Especially the ones you trained with. When was the last time she had slept through the night? Jennifer didn't remember. Sleep had always been a negotiation, a fragile contract between exhaustion and memory. Some nights she won. Most nights the past did. The morning after that phone call, the Phoenix sky was washed in burnt orange. The city hadn't yet woken. Coffee steamed in her kitchen. Her hands were steady, but something inside her was not. The voice from last night still echoed in her mind. One of the missing ravens isn't missing anymore. That shouldn't have been possible. There had been 4 of them at the end. 4 operatives left alive after 16 years of deniable service. 15 dead, 1 presumed captured, 1 medically incapacitated, 1 still undercover, and her, the one who made it out. So how could a ghost be calling from Istanbul? She turned the pin in her hand. The raven's wings were etched with microline inscriptions only visible under light, coordinates, dates, signatures of missions that didn't exist. Each one marked a place where she'd left something behind, a body, a secret, or a piece of herself. For years, she'd managed to live quietly, a civilian job with a private security contractor, volunteer shifts at a veterans center. She kept her head down, never spoke of where she'd been. But the past didn't like being ignored. It always found its way home. And now it had called her. She poured the coffee down the sink, grabbed her go-bag from the closet and set it on the counter. The duffel had been ready for years, packed, sealed, never opened. She told herself it was out of habit, not hope. Inside were the fragments of the person she used to be. A black field jacket, foreign currency, an encrypted sat phone, and a single, folded photograph. 6 faces. The original Raven unit. She stared at the photo for a long time. 5 smiles and 1 blank expression, hers. The others were gone. Except maybe 1. Her mind went back to the voice on the phone. She knew that voice. Not the tone, not the hesitation, but the cadence. The precise, deliberate rhythm that only someone from her unit would use. The same man who had once pulled her out of a collapsed tunnel in North Africa, coughing blood and dust, telling her, "If the world never knows, we'll still know. That's enough." His name had been Daniel Cross, Raven 2. Officially, he died in 2014. Unofficially, his body was never found. If he was alive, if he had resurfaced after 11 years. That meant one of 2 things. Either he was running, or someone was using his name. She opened the duffel. The smell of oil and old fabric filled the kitchen. Her civilian life fit neatly into a single drawer. Everything else belonged to the shadows. She called no one, left no note. Some exits don't need explanations. By dusk, she was on a flight out of Sky Harbor International under the alias Mara Keene, diplomatic consultant, Department of Energy liaison. The paperwork was clean, too clean. Someone had prepared it in advance, which meant someone had been expecting her return. At 30,000 feet, the world below looked quiet. Cities blurred into constellations. But she knew better. The silence between wars was always temporary. Istanbul, 3 days later. Rain swept across the Bosporus, turning the city lights into trembling reflections on the water. Jennifer moved through the crowd at Atatürk Airport like a ghost, invisible, unremarkable. The kind of person no one remembers seeing. Her contact had sent only 1 line in the briefing file. "You'll find him where the birds don't fly." That phrase had history. It was an old Raven code, a signal for compromised ground. She followed it to the Karakuri district, where narrow alleys smelled of rain and diesel, and cats prowled rooftops like sentries. The safe house was disguised as a repair shop, its metal shutters closed, the interior lit by a single bare bulb. Inside, a man sat at a workbench, turning a radio over in his hands. When he looked up, she froze. Daniel Cross. Older, leaner, the beard trimmed to military precision, but the eyes sharp, calculating, a mix of caution and guilt. "Alive. You're real," she said. He smiled faintly. "You sound disappointed." She didn't return the smile. "You were listed KIA. Wouldn't be the first time someone buried me too early." She stepped closer, studying him. Why now? Why reach out after 11 years? He exhaled, the sound more like a confession. "Because the Raven network been compromised. Someone's tracking the pins. The ones that were lost, they're being sold." Jennifer's jaw tightened. "That's impossible. Each pin is coded to a biometric signature. They can't be activated without." "Unless the person's dead," he interrupted, "or unless someone found a way around it." The silence that followed was thick, almost physical. He slid a small box across the table. Inside, under a layer of foam, was an identical obsidian Raven pin, except the wings were broken, the black enamel chipped, and faint red circuitry glowed beneath the surface. "This was recovered from a dead operative in Bucharest 2 months ago," he said. "Not ours. Someone else wearing it." "Copycat." "Not exactly. Whoever made it knew the specs. The micro-etching, the sensor data, that information was supposed to die with the program." Jennifer stared at the broken pin. It looked wrong, like something sacred that had been violated. "Who's behind it?" she asked. "That's the problem," Daniel said. "The trail ends with one of ours." Her pulse slowed. "Which one?" He hesitated. "Raven 6. Jennifer closed her eyes. Raven 6 had been Evelyn Shaw, infiltration specialist, linguist, and Jennifer's closest friend on the team. The only one who ever questioned what they were doing, who stayed up on rooftops after missions whispering, "How much of us will be left when this ends?" She had disappeared during an op in Syria, 2013. Everyone assumed she'd been captured or killed. If Evelyn was alive, if she was the one selling the tech, then the Ravens weren't just ghosts anymore. They were a threat. Jennifer looked at Daniel. "You sure about this?" He nodded. "I wish I was." She leaned back, running a hand over her face. The years had caught up with both of them, scars beneath the surface, the kind time doesn't heal. "You shouldn't have called me," she said. "I'm out." Daniel's expression darkened. "No one ever really gets out, Jen. You know that. You still carry the pin." She looked down. The Raven glimmered faintly under the bulb. For 16 years it had been a symbol of what she'd lost. Now it was bait. "What do you need from me?" she asked quietly. "Not much, just one more favor." She almost laughed. "That's how it starts." "I'm not asking you to fight," he said. "Just to help me find her. You were closest to Shaw. If she's alive, if she's selling information, maybe she'll listen to you." Jennifer stood and walked to the window. Rain streaked down the glass, distorting the lights of the city below. "And if she whoa." Daniel's voice was soft. "Then we stop her, before someone else does." The weight of those words settled between them like a shadow. That night she walked alone through the streets near Galata Bridge, her coat pulled tight against the rain. The city buzzed, music, traffic, distant laughter, but all she could hear was the steady echo of her boots against the cobblestones and the faint memory of Evelyn's voice. "If the world never knows, we'll still know. That's enough." But was it? Had it ever been? Jennifer stopped under an awning, staring out at the water where lights rippled like ghosts. She'd spent years justifying the things she'd done, the lies, the silence, the disappearances. It was easier when it was for something bigger than herself. But now, the lines were blurred. Someone was using their legacy to profit, to manipulate, to rewrite what they died for. Maybe the only way to protect the truth was to face it again. She took out her phone and sent a single encrypted message to a contact number she'd sworn never to use again. To Orion. Subject: Raven Protocol. Message: if she's alive, I'll find her. But if this goes bad, burn everything. Then she tossed the phone into the Bosporus. The next morning, she met Daniel at a cafe tucked beneath an overpass, the kind of place where no one asks questions. He'd already set up surveillance photos on his tablet, grainy images of a woman in a scarf, walking through a market in the fatty district. Same height, same gait, same profile. It was Evelyn. Alive. Jennifer stared at the screen. What's she doing here? Passing information to an arms broker named Saeed Taleb. He's ex-intelligence, now working freelance. If she's negotiating with him, she's selling data. Jennifer's throat tightened. She wouldn't. She already did. He slid her another image, a nighttime photo, Evelyn handing a sealed case to a man near the docks. Operation Timeline, Jennifer asked, voice flat. Tomorrow night. She's meeting Taleb again near the ruins of the old Ottoman fort. You can still walk away. She looked up. No, I can't. He nodded, the kind of nod only soldiers give each other before things go bad. As night fell over Istanbul, Jennifer checked her weapon, compact, silenced, efficient. Her reflection in the mirror looked unfamiliar. Civilian clothes gone, the old field jacket back in place. The same one she'd sworn never to wear again. The raven pin rested against her collar. The metal felt colder than usual. She took a breath, steady and slow. You wanted me back, she whispered to the ghosts. You got me. And as the rain started again, she stepped out into the night, the city lights flickering like memories behind her, and disappeared once more into the shadows she thought she'd left forever. How do you prepare to meet someone you already buried? Jennifer sat in the dark, the city humming faintly beyond the rain-smeared window, and tried to find an answer. Her hotel room overlooked the Bosporus, the kind of view people would kill to see once in a lifetime. But she wasn't seeing it. Her gaze was fixed on the small table beside the bed, where the raven pin rested in the glow of a single lamp. The same pin that had followed her across continents, across wars, across lives. She'd worn it into missions where no one came back. She'd taken it off only once, the night she burned her uniform and walked away from the shadows. And now it was back on the table, waiting, watching. The rain hit the glass harder now, driven sideways by the wind. She thought about Evelyn Shaw, Raven 6, the one who'd asked all the wrong questions in all the right ways. Do you ever wonder if we're the villains in someone else's story? Evelyn had said that once, sitting beside her on a rooftop in Aleppo, back when the sky glowed red and tracer fire stitched the horizon. Jennifer hadn't answered then. She didn't have one. Now she wished she did. The knock at the door came at 200. 2 taps, pause, 1 tap. A pattern only one person alive would still use. She opened it. Daniel stood in the hallway, rain dripping from his coat, eyes sharp but tired. It's confirmed, he said. The meet is happening tonight. Jennifer nodded. Where? The old Ottoman fort near the shoreline. 300. 2 vehicles, 4 armed men, 1 buyer, Taleb. Shaw's expected to deliver a data package. What kind of data? Encrypted defense schematics. Origin unknown. Could be black market, could be something worse. Jennifer took the pin from the table and clipped it to her jacket. The metal felt heavier tonight. Daniel noticed. You sure you want to wear that? She'll recognize it, Jennifer said. That's the point. By 2:50 hours, the rain had faded to a mist. The air smelled of salt and rust. The old fort sat like a scar at the edge of the water, crumbling stone walls, graffiti layered over history, the echo of centuries whispering through empty corridors. Jennifer crouched behind a broken archway, eyes scanning through the scope. Daniel was positioned 200 meters west, covering the approach. The only sound was the faint static in her earpiece and the rhythmic thud of her pulse. "Movement," Daniel whispered. "2 vehicles, 5 heat signatures, she's with them." Jennifer adjusted the lens, the blurred figures coming into focus under the flicker of a distant streetlight. Evelyn stepped out of the car first, hood up, moving carefully, scanning her surroundings the same way Jennifer did. Trained, methodical, alive. Time stopped for a heartbeat. She looked older but not defeated. The kind of tired that comes from carrying ghosts too long. The kind Jennifer knew too well. Evelyn crossed to a man in a dark coat, Taleb by the look of him. Hands that didn't shake, eyes that never smiled. He carried the case, silver, reinforced, sealed. "Money for secrets." Jennifer whispered into her mic. "I have visual." "Copy that," Daniel replied. "Wait for the exchange." But Jennifer wasn't listening anymore. The past had come to life 30 yards away, and every breath she took felt borrowed. Evelyn placed the case on the hood of the car. Taleb opened it, inspecting the contents, a small data drive encased in glass, numbers etched across its surface like veins. He nodded, satisfied, handed her an envelope in return. That should have been it. But then Evelyn spoke, voice faint, barely audible through the mic. "Tell your employer he'll get the rest once I have confirmation the files are in Ankara." Jennifer froze. The accent, the tone, it was her, no mistake. "Stand by," Daniel's voice came through. "We'll intercept once the vehicle's separate." But Jennifer's instincts screamed otherwise. Something about the scene didn't fit. The spacing, the positioning. Evelyn wasn't relaxed. She was tense, defensive. Then she saw it, a flicker of motion on the rooftops above the fort. Infrared glint, a sniper scope catching moonlight, not theirs. "Daniel," she hissed, "it's a setup." "What?" "She's being watched. They're going to." The shot cracked before she could finish. Evelyn staggered. The data drive flew from her hand, shattering against the ground. The fort erupted in chaos, shouting, gunfire, headlights flashing through the fog. Jennifer broke cover, sprinting toward the commotion. "Damn it, Jen." Daniel's voice cut through static, but she was already moving. Rain hit her face like needles. Her boots splashed through mud and glass. The old training kicked in: focus, control, breathe. Evelyn fell behind the car, clutching her shoulder, blood soaking her sleeve. The sniper fired again, missing by inches. Jennifer dropped beside her, grabbed her collar, dragged her into cover. "Stay down," she hissed. Evelyn blinked, eyes widening in disbelief. "Jen." "Yeah," Jennifer said, "you're welcome." For a second the chaos vanished, replaced by silence and memory. 2 ghosts staring at each other across a decade. "You shouldn't be here," Evelyn whispered. "Neither should you." Another round hit the car window, shattering glass over them. Jennifer leaned out, spotted the muzzle flash on the rooftop, exhaled once, squeezed the trigger. One clean shot. The sniper dropped. "Still breathing?" Jennifer asked. "Barely," Evelyn said, grimacing. "Left shoulder through and through." Jennifer tore a strip from her jacket, pressed it against the wound. "You're lucky." Evelyn gave a bitter laugh. "Never felt lucky a day in my life." "Move." Jennifer pulled her up, half carrying, half dragging her toward the archway. "Daniel, extraction point Delta. I've got Shaw." "Copy," came the reply. "Vehicles are retreating. You've got 5 minutes before local response." They stumbled through the rain, the sound of sirens distant but growing. Evelyn's blood left a trail across the stone floor. Jennifer's hand stayed firm on her arm. When they reached the alley behind the fort, Daniel's car screeched to a stop. He jumped out, eyes wide as he saw the woman leaning against Jennifer. "I'll be damned," he muttered. "It really is her." Evelyn's eyes flicked toward him. "You look terrible." He almost smiled. "You're bleeding on my seat." She laughed, a single dry sound that turned into a cough. Still the same. Jennifer pushed her inside. Drive. They sped through narrow streets, engines echoing against the old stone walls. Jennifer pressed on the wound again, her gloves darkening. "Why, Ev?" she asked. "Why sell it?" Evelyn looked at her, tired, pale, but not broken. "Because they left us with nothing." "What the hell does that mean?" "You know what it means," Evelyn said, voice low. "We gave them everything. 16 years. Names, faces, lives, and what did we get? A pin, a secret, a lie." Jennifer's throat tightened. "That pin saved people." "It buried us," Evelyn whispered. "You think anyone cares what we did? They erased us, Jen, all of us. I was done hiding in their shadow." Daniel gripped the steering wheel. "So you decided to sell classified tech." Evelyn looked out the window, the rain reflecting in her eyes. "I decided to make them remember." Jennifer didn't answer. She couldn't, because part of her understood. And that was the worst part of all. They reached the safe house 20 minutes later. Daniel locked the doors while Jennifer patched Evelyn's shoulder under dim light. The room smelled of dust and antiseptic. "You'll live," Jennifer said. "Bullet missed the artery." "Always had good timing," Evelyn muttered, trying to smile. "Still wearing the raven." Jennifer glanced at her collar. "Always." "Then you're still one of them." Jennifer met her eyes. "You make it sound like a curse." "Isn't it?" Evelyn said softly. Silence. Only the hum of the old refrigerator filled the space. Finally, Jennifer spoke. "You're not wrong about being forgotten, but selling what we swore to protect, that's not justice. That's surrender." Evelyn's gaze hardened. "And staying silent, that's loyalty." "It's survival." "For who?" Evelyn asked. "Them or you?" Jennifer looked away. The rain outside had turned into a steady downpour. Somewhere, a muezzin's call drifted faintly through the city, haunting, beautiful, timeless. Evelyn closed her eyes. "You know, I used to think we were saving the world. Turns out we were just moving its shadows around." Jennifer didn't respond. She couldn't argue, not with that truth. Daniel stepped forward. "We can get her out," he said. "There's still time before the network realizes she's alive." Jennifer turned to him. "And then what? You think she'll just vanish again?" "We don't have another option." Evelyn opened her eyes. "Yes, you do." Jennifer frowned. "What are you talking about?" "There's another drive," Evelyn said weakly. "Hidden, with the names of everyone who funded the Raven program. Politicians, contractors, intelligence officers, the people who built us and erased us. You find that, you find the truth." Jennifer's heart thudded once. "Where?" Evelyn looked at her, a small, broken smile forming. "Where the birds don't fly." Jennifer froze. The code phrase again, the same one Daniel had used to summon her here. "Ev," she whispered, "what did you do?" Evelyn's eyes fluttered. "What we were trained to do," she murmured. "Adapt." And then she went still, not dead, not gone, but slipping into unconsciousness. Daniel moved to check her pulse. "Stable, we've got to move before dawn." Jennifer stood by the window, the weight of everything pressing down on her. The rain outside had stopped, but thunder rolled in the distance, low, restless, unresolved. She looked at the raven pin once more. Its wings caught the light, reflecting two fractured shadows on the wall. "Where the birds don't fly," she whispered. "You never stopped playing the game, did you?" She turned to Daniel. "Get her secure. I'm going after that drive." "Jen, if that date is real, it's bigger than her, bigger than us, and if it falls into the wrong hands." Daniel sighed. "You're walking straight back into the same darkness you escaped." She gave a faint, tired smile. "I was never out." And as the first light of dawn crept over the Bosporus, Jennifer Hayes, the last free raven, holstered her weapon, checked her compass, and stepped into the gray light. The mission was back on. But this time, it wasn't about obedience. It was about truth. Who do you become when the world you served starts hiding from you? The tunnels beneath Istanbul had no beginning and no end, a labyrinth of forgotten water channels and buried chapels stretching beneath the old city like veins beneath skin. Jennifer moved through them alone, her flashlight beam slicing through centuries of dust and dripping stone. Each step echoed softly, swallowed almost instantly by the weight of history. The phrase still haunted her, where the birds don't fly. Evelyn's dying clue. It wasn't just code, it was location. The Ravens had used it before. Years ago, in briefings that never made it into any file, it referred to off-grid dead zones, places no satellite could map and no drone could survive in. There was one such area beneath the Hagia Irene, a derelict Byzantine reservoir sealed after an earthquake. No fly zone, no surveillance, no signals. Exactly the kind of place you'd hide something you didn't want found. Jennifer stopped, the beam of her flashlight landing on a rusted iron gate marked with faded Cyrillic. She tested it. Locked. A few seconds with a tension wrench and the tumblers clicked free. Some skills didn't fade. She pushed the gate open, the sound scraping through the tunnel like a warning. Her boots splashed through shallow water. Somewhere above, the city pulsed cars, voices, life. Down here, there was only the whisper of her breathing. She remembered training for conditions like this, total isolation, minimal visibility, sensory deprivation. The instructors used to say, "When the silence starts talking, you're halfway home or halfway gone." Jennifer wasn't sure which one she was tonight. Her light caught on something half buried beneath the silt, a rusted crate. She knelt, brushed away the grime. The lettering was faint but familiar, R06 restricted SIGINT. Her pulse quickened. Evelyn had hidden something here. She opened the latch. Inside, wrapped in waterproof plastic, was a small metal case. No markings, just a single raven emblem scratched onto the surface, not etched, scratched, hand-done, desperate. She lifted it out carefully. The case was cold, heavier than it looked. "Got you," she whispered. The sound of water, dripping somewhere ahead, broke her focus. She turned off the light, listening. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, not echoes of her own. Someone else was down here. Jennifer moved behind a pillar, drew her sidearm. The darkness pressed in around her like a living thing. She could hear her own heartbeat now, steady, trained, the rhythm of survival. A beam of light flickered in the distance, sweeping across the tunnel walls. Voices followed, low, foreign, professional, Russian or Georgian accents. 3, maybe 4, armed. She cursed silently. Evelyn's cache had been compromised before she even found it. The first figure stepped into view, tactical gear, night vision, suppressed rifle. Jennifer's instincts took over. One controlled breath. One shot. The man dropped without a sound. "Contact," someone shouted in Russian. She moved silent, fluid, using the columns as cover. A burst of rounds tore through the darkness. Sparks lit the damp air. She slid to the left, returned fire. 1 down, 2 remaining. The third tried to flank. She caught the movement in the reflection of a puddle, pivoted, fired once. Silence. Then another sound, not boots, metal, a pin hitting stone. Grenade. She dove behind a fallen column as the explosion tore through the chamber. The shockwave hit her like a fist. Water surged, dust raining from the ceiling. Her ears rang. She coughed, forcing herself up. The case was gone. Through the haze, she saw a figure sprinting down the tunnel, the last surviving operative, the case slung over his shoulder. "Not today," she muttered and gave chase. The pursuit wound through twisting corridors, collapsing stairs, pools of stagnant water. Her flashlight beam wavered, catching flashes of the man ahead, black gear, limping slightly. She fired twice. Missed. He reached a service hatch leading up toward the surface. Jennifer holstered the pistol, jumped, caught the metal ladder, climbed fast. Her muscles burned. The hatch above gave way to night air and the smell of rain-soaked earth. They emerged in a courtyard behind a mosque, the city lights shimmering across the Bosporus. The operative glanced back once, startled she followed this far. He turned to run again, but Jennifer was faster. She tackled him hard into the gravel. They rolled. The case skidded out of reach. He swung first, trained, efficient. She blocked, countered with a strike to the throat. He stumbled. She caught his arm, twisted, and slammed him to the ground. The knife in his hand clattered away. For a moment they locked eyes. His were wide, terrified not of her but of something else. "You don't know what you're holding," he rasped. Jennifer pressed the gun to his temple. "Then tell me." He smiled, or tried to. "It's already too late." She hesitated for half a heartbeat, and that was enough. He jerked forward, driving his shoulder into her midsection. The gun fired wild into the air. He rolled away, staggered to his feet, then collapsed, a clean hole between his eyes. A second gunshot echoed through the courtyard. Jennifer turned. Daniel stood by the gate, pistol still raised, his expression unreadable. "You followed me," she said. "You're welcome," he replied. "You're predictable." She exhaled, holstering her weapon. He had the case. Daniel walked over, picking it up carefully. "Then we're lucky, because now we have it and a body we can't explain." Jennifer looked down at the dead man. His uniform had no insignia but the equipment American make, not Russian, not mercenary. U.S. issue. Her stomach tightened. "They sent him," she whispered. Daniel frowned. "Who?" "Us," she said. "Our own people." Meanwhile, 6,000 miles away, in Washington, D.C., a secure conference room in the Pentagon sat under the flicker of fluorescent light. 4 people around a polished table, all older, all wearing expressions that spoke of too many secrets and too little sleep. "Hayes is active again," said the man at the head of the table, Secretary of Defense Walter Ryland. "She recovered the Istanbul cache before our retrieval team could secure it." Across from him, a woman in a dark suit, Director Larkin of the Intelligence Oversight Division, folded her hands. Then the team was compromised. Ryland's gaze hardened. "No," she neutralized them. Larkin tilted her head. "Then she knows we're monitoring her." "Of course she knows," Ryland said. "She helped build half of the protocols we're using to track her." The man beside him, a gray-haired analyst named Connors, cleared his throat. "Sir, if the Hayes-Shaw cache contains what we think it does, this could become catastrophic if exposed." Larkin nodded slowly. "The Raven program was never authorized for congressional record. If she releases names, locations—" Ryland cut her off. "She won't. Hayes isn't a whistleblower, she's a soldier. She's cleaning up the mess Shaw started." "And if she finds out we ordered the retrieval?" Larkin asked. Ryland didn't answer immediately. He stared at the muted television mounted on the wall, a live satellite image of Istanbul, flickering red heat signatures marking recent gunfire near the old district. "Then she'll do what she's always done," he said quietly. "Finish the mission, even if it means destroying herself." Connors leaned forward. "And if she does?" Ryland's eyes stayed fixed on the screen. "Then we'll finish it for her." Back in Istanbul, Jennifer sat on the edge of the safe house cot, cleaning the blood from her hands. The case lay on the table beside her, unopened. Daniel stood by the window, watching the street. "You think that hit team was U.S.?" he asked. "I know the gear," she said. "Custom suppressors, domestic manufacture, the kind only our side gets." "Then we've got bigger problems." "Yeah," Jennifer said. "We're not ghosts anymore, we're liabilities." Daniel turned from the window. "We should destroy it." Jennifer shook her head. "No, if this case holds the data Shaw said it did, it's proof of everything." "Proof won't save us." "It might save the truth." He exhaled, walking over. "You're chasing ghosts, Jen. The program's gone. The people who built it are. They'll burn the world to keep their secrets." She looked up at him, eyes steady. "Then let them try." He stared at her for a moment, then sighed. I'll get us new IDs. You've got 12 hours before every intelligence agency from here to Langley comes looking. She nodded. 12 hours is more than enough. When he left, she finally opened the case. Inside, beneath a layer of foam, lay a small black drive with a single engraving, a raven mid-flight. And beneath it, a folded note in handwriting she recognized instantly. If you're reading this, you found what they fear. Don't trust anyone, not even me. The truth dies in silence. Yes. Jennifer stared at it until the words blurred. Then she whispered, You never stopped believing in redemption, did you? Her reflection in the metal lid looked older, harder. But for the first time in years, she saw something else behind her eyes. Resolve. The rain outside had stopped, replaced by a heavy electric stillness. She slipped the drive into a sealed pouch, clipped the raven pin back to her collar, and whispered to the empty room. Let's finish what we started. By sunrise, she was gone, melted back into the city's pulse. The raven pin caught the morning light as she vanished into the crowd, leaving behind a trail of silence and a mission that no longer belonged to anyone else. And somewhere above, in a secure room in Washington, Secretary Ryland watched her on a live feed, expression grim, voice low. Activate Protocol Kestrel, he said. Hayes just became a national threat. What does it feel like when your country starts hunting you? Jennifer used to think betrayal had a sound, a gunshot, a slammed door, the crackle of a radio call that never came. But betrayal doesn't sound like anything. It just arrives quiet, efficient, inevitable. 3 hours after dawn, every airport camera in Europe had her face on file. The name Mara Keene was flagged. So were 5 of her aliases. 2 safe houses already raided. 1 contact dead. And the satellite overhead, circling Istanbul like a patient predator, wasn't Russian or Chinese. It was American. She sat in the back of a cab on the outskirts of the city, sunglasses hiding the exhaustion in her eyes, scarf covering the line of a healing scar along her jaw. The city looked normal: traffic, vendors, life, but she knew the pattern too well. Civilians walking one way, operatives moving another. It was all angles and surveillance. Even the air felt watched. The driver asked something in Turkish. She shook her head. Shortcut to Kilios, she said quietly. He nodded and turned north. The ocean came into view an hour later, dark gray waves smashing against the cliffs of the Black Sea. Jennifer stepped out, handed the driver extra cash, and waited until the car disappeared around the bend. Only then did she allow herself to breathe. The case was hidden inside a weatherproof pack strapped to her chest. The Raven Drive, Evelyn's final secret. Every time she looked at it, she felt the pull of 2 opposing truths, the duty to protect and the need to reveal. She used to think those things were the same. Now she knew better. Her old training whispered through her thoughts like an old ghost. When the mission changes, adapt. When the mission dies, survive. But this time, she wasn't sure which came first. Back in Washington, the storm had already started. A secure video feed flickered in a dim Pentagon briefing room. Secretary Ryland leaned forward, jaw tight, eyes shadowed by the glow of the monitor. Status, he said. Target has gone dark north of Istanbul, replied a voice from the screen, a man in tactical fatigues, face obscured by shadow. We've locked down all known exit points. We expect her to reach the northern coastline within 6 hours. Ryland nodded. Containment only, I want her alive. Understood, the operative said. But permission to speak freely, sir. You trained her. You know what she's capable of. Containment might not be possible. Ryland's eyes narrowed. Then make it possible. The feed cut out. He exhaled and rubbed his temple. Damn it, Jennifer. Behind him, Director Larkin spoke softly. You sound like a man who still believes she's one of the good ones. Ryland didn't turn around. Belief has nothing to do with it. She's doing what we taught her to do, follow the mission. The problem is, we stopped telling her what that mission is. Then maybe you should have never built her, Larkin said. He looked at her then, eyes hard. We didn't build her, we discovered her. The difference is why we can't stop her. The storm rolled in over the Black Sea by late afternoon, sharp wind, distant thunder. Jennifer moved along the cliffs toward an abandoned NATO listening station. It had been decommissioned years ago, but she remembered it well. She worked here once, long ago, back when it was still humming with encrypted chatter and human ghosts. She reached the rusted steel door, pried it open, and stepped inside. The air smelled of salt, dust, and memory. The control room was half collapsed, cables like veins hanging from the ceiling. But one terminal still worked, military grade, battery reserve flickering weakly. Good enough. She plugged in the drive. For a moment, nothing. Then lines of code cascaded across the cracked monitor, the machine wheezing like an old veteran remembering the war. Access denied, encryption lock active. She tried again, same result. Then a small window appeared. Voice key required, Raven 3. Her own call sign. She hadn't heard it spoken aloud in years. She hesitated, then leaned close to the mic. Raven 3, Jennifer Hayes, authorization Theta Black. Silence, then a tone, then another line of text. Secondary authentication required, biometric verification. She froze. The system wanted something else. Not a password, not a code, a fingerprint. She peeled off her gloves, pressed her thumb to the sensor. The screen flickered again. Match confirmed, access granted. Files began decrypting. Dozens of folders, each tagged by location, date, and classified operation ID. Most were familiar missions she'd lived. Others were ones she'd only heard whispers of. But then she saw it, a folder labeled Obsidian Ledger. She opened it. Inside were financial records, internal memos, and black contracts connecting the Raven program to private defense corporations, shell accounts, and congressional committees. Billions in off-book funding, decades of manipulation. Every secret war they fought, paid for by people who never wanted peace. And at the top of the authorization list, one name repeated again and again, Walter Ryland. Her breath caught. The man who had saluted her. The one who'd vouched for her integrity when the world thought women didn't belong in covert operations. He'd been the one using her all along. She leaned back in the chair, hands trembling slightly. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind through the broken window. So this was the truth Evelyn had died for. Not honor, not legacy. Accountability. Jennifer copied the files to a portable drive, sealed it, and wiped the system clean. Then she stared at the glowing Raven symbol on the main screen, the same insignia she wore on her collar, and whispered, "You always said some things can't be explained. I think it's time they were." She heard movement outside, boots crunching gravel. Too soon. They'd found her. She grabbed her gear and slipped out through the back corridor. The storm had darkened the sky to steel gray. Lightning flashed across the horizon. She moved fast, low, silent, down the rocky slope toward the shoreline. Two figures appeared behind her. Then a third. Their radios crackled. One voice she recognized immediately. "Hayes, this is Agent Corbett. Drop the weapon. You're under directive detainment under the Patriot Expansion Act." Jennifer's lips curved slightly. "You rehearsed that well. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." She ducked behind a boulder as bullets tore through the air. The rain masked her movement. She fired twice, hitting one in the leg, another in the shoulder. The third dove for cover. "You don't have to do this," Corbett shouted. "I already am," she called back. She threw a flash charge, then sprinted toward the shoreline. The storm raged around her, rain slamming her face, wind ripping at her coat. Ahead, the sea churned violently against the rocks. A single fishing boat bobbed in the distance, one she arranged through an old smuggler contact, her only exit. She reached the edge, signaled once with her flashlight. A small light blinked back. Movement behind her, Corbett again, closing in. "Stop," he shouted, leveling his weapon. "Don't do this." Jennifer turned slowly, rain running down her face. "You think this is about betrayal," she said. "It's about truth. Truth doesn't matter if no one's alive to tell it." She smiled faintly. "That's the risk, isn't it?" He hesitated. "They'll kill you, Hayes, you know that." "They already did," she said softly. Then she stepped backward off the cliff. The wind roared in her ears as she plunged into the freezing black water. The world became noise and weight and silence all at once. She surfaced gasping, spotted the boat, and swam for it with the strength of every mission that had ever gone wrong but never stopped her. Hands pulled her aboard. The fisherman didn't speak. He just nodded and turned the boat toward open water. Jennifer sat against the hull, soaked, shivering but alive. The Raven Drive was still strapped to her chest, safe. The coastline faded behind her, the storm swallowing everything in gray. And for the first time in years, she wasn't running from the past. She was carrying it somewhere it couldn't be buried again. Hours later, in a surveillance control center in Virginia, a technician looked up from his console. "Sir," he said, "the Hayes tracker just went offline." Secretary Ryland stared at the screen. "Offline how?" "Submerged for more than 20 minutes. Signal terminated." Larkin folded her arms. "Then she's gone." Ryland's expression didn't change. "No," he said quietly. "If there's one thing Jennifer Hayes doesn't do, it's disappear. She always resurfaces." He turned toward the window overlooking the Potomac, the city lights shimmering below. "Find her, before she finds me." Somewhere out in the open sea, dawn broke over a gray horizon. The waves glowed faintly pink under the rising sun. Jennifer stood at the bow of the boat, hair damp, eyes fixed on the endless water ahead. She touched the raven pin on her jacket, feeling its cold edges beneath her fingers. "For 16 years I served in silence," she murmured. "Maybe now it's time silence served something else." The wind caught her words and carried them away. Behind her, the world was already moving to erase her again. But ahead, somewhere across that horizon, was the chance to finally speak. And this time, she wasn't asking for permission. What happens when truth becomes the enemy? 3 days after she vanished into the storm, the world began to hear her name again, not as a soldier, not as a ghost, but as a question. Who was Jennifer Hayes? In official briefings, she didn't exist. No service record, no digital footprint, no history beyond a decade-old photograph labeled deceased. But somewhere on encrypted forums, on veteran message boards and shadow networks, fragments began to surface. A grainy image of a woman stepping off a cargo boat in Varna, Bulgaria. A file hash linking to something called Obsidian Ledger. And a single line of text whispered in code. "She's not running, she's rewriting the mission." Varna, Bulgaria. An abandoned radio tower near the Black Sea. The concrete base had once transmitted Soviet propaganda. Now it hummed again, this time with electricity stolen from forgotten power lines. Jennifer sat at an old metal table, sleeves rolled up, the Raven Drive connected to a portable terminal. The air was cold enough for her breath to fog. Across from her sat a man named Petrov, ex-intelligence, black market engineer, one of the few who'd ever owed her a favor. "You know what you're asking me to do," he said in thickly accented English. "If we open this, they will trace it. The Americans, the Europeans, everyone." "They'll come either way," Jennifer said. "The only difference is what happens before they arrive." Petrov studied her. "You used to work for them, why turn now?" Jennifer looked out through the shattered window where gulls circled the gray water. Because I finally understand what they built. We weren't soldiers, we were insurance. They created us to do what they couldn't admit existed, and then they buried us to prove we never did. He hesitated, then nodded. Encryption level. Quantum hybrid lattice. Self-erasing sequence if tampered. Petrov gave a low whistle. You came prepared. I learned from people who didn't make it back. He plugged in a drive of his own, fingers flying across the keyboard. The room filled with the soft hum of decrypting algorithms and the rhythmic clatter of mechanical keys. An old, familiar heartbeat of secrets unfolding. On the screen, the Raven sigil began to flicker. Then, slowly, files opened, redacted memos, scanned contracts, intercepted messages between defense agencies and private firms. Each document painted the same truth. The Raven program had been funded not to protect peace, but to manufacture necessity. Covert crises that justified endless budgets. The ghosts they created weren't heroes or villains, just tools in a machine built to keep itself alive. Jennifer leaned forward, jaw tightening. Can you transmit anonymously? Petrov's eyes darted across the data. To who? Everyone, she said. Every journalist, every whistleblower, every forum that ever asked why names disappear. He hesitated. Once we hit send, there is no undo. Good, she said. Some things shouldn't be undone. Meanwhile, 5,600 miles away, in a classified sublevel beneath the Pentagon, panic had taken a quieter shape. Director Larkin set down her tablet. She's breached the firewall, she said. They're decrypting sections of the ledger. Secretary Ryland didn't react at first. He just stared at the map projected on the wall, blinking red coordinates moving north across Europe. Can we intercept? We tried, Larkin said. She's using hybrid relays through civilian radio frequencies, old Cold War networks. She's invisible on every channel except the ones no one remembers. Ryland exhaled, the weight of decades settling into his voice. She always did understand ghosts. Larkin folded her arms. You could end this, call off the hunt, let her speak. Ryland turned to her, eyes like cold steel. You think the public can handle the truth about what we built, about the missions they funded in their name? Maybe they deserve to. His silence was its own kind of answer. Larkin stepped closer. She trusted you once, so did I. Don't make this the hill you die on. Ryland's voice was low. I already died on it, a long time ago. Back in Varna, the old radio tower groaned as wind swept through broken beams. The terminal beeped upload sequence nearing completion. 78%, 81%, 84%. Petrov frowned. Someone's trying to counterstream the data, packet interference, government tracer. Jennifer grabbed the receiver, switched frequencies manually. Redirect through shortwave 11.38 MHz. Old maritime channel. They won't think to look there. Petrov grinned despite himself. You really are one of them. Not anymore, she said. He paused. When this is done, what then? Jennifer didn't answer right away. She looked at the screen, the files spilling out into the digital ether, unstoppable now. Then maybe the world decides whether silence was ever worth it. The upload hit 90%. Outside, headlights cut through the mist. Engines. Too many. Petrov swore. They found us. Jennifer unplugged the drives, pocketed one, handed the other to him. Take this and run west. Find a journalist named Maria Ionescu in Bucharest. Tell her the Ravens were real. He blinked. And you? She loaded her pistol. I'll keep their attention. Hayes. Go. He hesitated a heartbeat too long, then nodded and disappeared through the back door, vanishing into the cold fog. Jennifer crouched by the main control board, flicking off the lights. The hum of approaching vehicles grew louder. 5 silhouettes appeared outside the tower, tactical gear, night vision suppressors, efficient, American. She smiled faintly to herself. You never send amateurs. Through the static of her earpiece came a familiar voice. Hayes, this is Ryland. Her muscles went still. I'm asking you to stop, he said. You've done enough damage. She switched to transmit. You mean I finally did my job? You don't understand. I understand perfectly, she interrupted. You built an empire out of silence. You turned people into ghosts and called it patriotism. But you forgot something, Walter. Even ghosts remember who they were. Ryland's voice hardened. You think this changes anything? The files, the exposure, it won't fix what you lost. I'm not doing this for me, she said. I'm doing it for the 15 who didn't come home. Outside, boots splashed through puddles. Time was up. She took a breath, looked at the small raven pin on her collar. Do you remember what you told me after my first mission? She said quietly. You said the best soldiers never make noise, they just make a difference. Well, this is my noise. She switched off the radio, pulled the final circuit breaker. Darkness swallowed the room. The door burst open, flashlights slicing the air. She moved before they did one silent step, 2 shots gone behind cover. Muzzle flashes illuminated brief shapes of chaos, water dripping, shadows twisting, breath in short bursts. It wasn't about winning, it was about time. The upload finished 100%, transmission complete. Somewhere out in the world, 1,000 screens lit up. Headlines began to form. U.S. covert program exposed. The Ghost OPRTAVES. Obsidian Raven FILES leaked. Jennifer caught one last glimpse of the screen before a bullet shattered it. She hit the floor, pain blooming across her shoulder. She rolled, fired once, twice, and silence followed. Smoke rained blood. Her breathing slowed. The pain was sharp but distant, almost familiar, like an old companion returning for one last visit. Outside, sirens began to rise, Bulgarian police, maybe, or NATO task units. It didn't matter. The story was already loose. The truth was already flying. She leaned against the wall, pressing her hand to the wound, eyes fluttering closed for a moment. In the faint reflection of broken glass, she saw her own face, tired, older, but alive. Alive enough to finish what others couldn't. Washington, 4 hours later. Secretary Ryland watched the chaos unfold across every news channel, reporters shouting questions, officials denying knowledge, analysts dissecting the documents faster than his staff could classify them again. Larkin stood in the doorway. It's over, she said quietly. Ryland didn't turn. It was over the day we created her. Where is she now? He shook his head. Doesn't matter, the world finally knows. Larkin stepped closer. And you, what will you do? He looked at his own reflection in the glass, the weight of 28 years of silence pressing down. I'll do what she did, he said softly. Face it. Somewhere near the Romanian border, a freight train cut through the dark countryside. In the last car, hidden among crates of grain, Jennifer sat wrapped in a blanket, shoulder bandaged, laptop dimly glowing. On the screen, messages flooded in, journalists verifying sources, soldiers thanking her anonymously, ordinary people writing words she never thought she'd read again. We believe you. Thank you for your service. They can't bury all of us. She smiled weakly, the kind of smile that isn't about happiness but release. She closed the laptop, looked out at the blur of dawn breaking over the horizon, soft gold cutting through gray. The world had changed overnight. Maybe not enough, but enough to matter. She touched the raven pin on her jacket. The metal was warm from her skin. 16 years in the dark, she whispered. Maybe that was enough to teach me what light's worth. The train roared forward, carrying her toward a country she didn't yet know, toward a future no one had written. And behind her, across 1,000 screens and hearts, The truth she'd carried for decades finally had a voice. Not a loud one, not a perfect one, but real. And sometimes that's all the world needs. What do you become when your war finally ends? The train had crossed into the Carpathians before dawn. Snow dusted the tracks like forgotten ashes. Jennifer sat alone in the last carriage, her breath faint clouds in the cold air. The wound in her shoulder throbbed dully beneath the bandage, but she didn't mind. Pain was proof that she was still here, still real. Outside, the world moved past in silence, forests, rivers, small villages waking to morning, each one untouched by the ghost she'd spent her life chasing. It was strange, she thought, how peace always seemed so close from a distance, but never from within. She closed her eyes and listened to the rhythm of the wheels. 4 beats, pause, 4 beats, like the old field signal they used in the Ravens. Alive, safe, moving. The world had changed while she was gone. And now it was changing because of her. 2 weeks later, Bucharest. The cafe was small, tucked between narrow streets where vines climbed cracked stone walls. It smelled of strong coffee and rain. Jennifer sat by the window, wearing a dark coat and a knitted scarf that hid most of her face. The scar along her jaw had healed into a pale reminder. She liked it that way. It told the truth without needing words. A small television above the counter murmured in Romanian. English subtitles ran across the bottom of the screen. Global Inquiry expands into U.S. covert operations, known as Project Obsidian Raven. Secretary of Defense Walter Ryland announced his resignation this morning, citing a need for accountability in matters long ignored. Public opinion divided hero or traitor. The debate continues. Jennifer watched without expression. The words didn't sting, but they didn't soothe either. She hadn't done it for the headlines. She'd done it because someone had to. A waitress approached, placing a cup of coffee on the table. "On the house," she said softly, "for what you did." Jennifer looked up. The woman couldn't have been more than 25, too young to remember the wars that never officially happened. But her eyes carried something older, gratitude mixed with understanding. Jennifer gave a faint nod. "Thank you." The woman hesitated. "Is it true?" she asked quietly. "All of it." Jennifer's gaze drifted to the television again, then back to the girl. "The truth is never all of it," she said. "It's just the part people are ready to see." The girl smiled sadly and walked away. Jennifer sipped the coffee. It was strong, bitter, real. She let it warm her hands as she watched the city breathe outside the window. Cars passed, people laughed, life went on. The world never paused for heroes or ghosts. A soft vibration drew her attention. Her phone, an encrypted model Petrov had given her, buzzed once. A single message flashed on the screen. From DK. "Still alive, still covering tracks, thank you." She smiled, small, tired, genuine. Daniel Cross. He'd made it out after all. That meant one more name didn't have to join the dead. She typed back 2 words. "Stay invisible." Then she powered off the phone, removed the SIM and slipped it into her coffee, watching it sink like a stone. Later that day, she walked through a cemetery on the edge of the city, not to visit a grave but to create one. She stopped near an old oak tree, cleared a patch of frost, and placed something in the soil, the raven pin. It caught the pale light, the black metal glinting one last time before she covered it gently with earth. "No monuments," she whispered. "No medals, just memory." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain and pine. For a moment she thought she heard voices, the soft murmur of her team, echoes of laughter, commands, the click of gear being loaded before a mission. But it was only the wind. Still she smiled. "I carried you long enough," she said. "Time to rest." She stood there for a while, head bowed, before turning away. The world didn't need the ravens anymore. The world just needed to remember what silence costs. Washington, D.C. 3 months later. A congressional hearing room buzzed with cameras and questions. At the center of it all sat former Secretary Walter Ryland, older now, his posture still straight but his eyes hollowed by sleepless nights. "Mr. Ryland," a senator said, voice sharp, "do you admit to the creation and deployment of covert military operatives under a program codenamed Obsidian Raven?" Ryland hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." "And do you acknowledge that this program operated outside U.S. and international law?" "Yes." "And that dozens of operatives were erased from records, denied recognition, or killed under false circumstances?" He looked up. "They were erased to protect missions that never should have existed. I told myself it was for the greater good. I was wrong." The room murmured, cameras flashed, the senator leaned forward. "Where are those operatives now?" Ryland's gaze drifted toward the audience gallery, to an empty seat in the back row. He smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly. "Somewhere better than here," he said softly. That same morning, in a small village near Lake Bled, Slovenia, an older woman named Katerina unlocked the door to her local post office. Inside her box was an unmarked envelope. No return address, just her name, written in precise handwriting. Inside was a photograph, 6 people in desert gear, standing in front of a rusted truck under a blazing sun. One of them was her brother, killed in a mission that never happened. On the back of the photo, a single line: "They never forgot him, neither will we." Katerina wiped her eyes, looking out toward the snow-covered hills. Somewhere, she thought, someone had kept their promise. By summer, whispers turned into movements. Journalists dug deeper. Veterans spoke up. The Obsidian Raven files sparked something larger, not a rebellion but remembrance. Across the world, people began to leave small black raven emblems on memorials, park benches, and military walls, quiet tributes to those who'd fought unseen. No organization, no orders, just gratitude carried by rumor. And no one knew who started it, except one woman watching from afar. It was autumn again when Jennifer reached the coast of Portugal. The air smelled of salt and eucalyptus. She rented a small cabin overlooking the Atlantic, nothing fancy, just wood, wind, and peace. She spent her mornings walking the cliffs, her evenings sketching the horizon in an old notebook. Some nights she'd fall asleep to the sound of the sea and dream of the desert, of Evelyn laughing under a starlit sky, of Daniel tuning a radio, of voices whispering coordinates that would never be written down. And when she woke, it took her a moment to remember they were gone. But the ache didn't hurt the same anymore. It felt lighter, like the space left by something once heavy finally set down. One morning, while the sun climbed slowly over the water, a child wandered near the cliffs collecting stones. She stopped when she saw Jennifer sitting there, notebook open, watching the horizon. "Are you a soldier?" the girl asked. Jennifer smiled. "I used to be." "Did you win?" Jennifer looked at the sea, endless, shifting, alive. "I think so," she said, "but not the way you mean." The girl nodded thoughtfully, then ran back toward her parents. Jennifer watched her go, a faint smile lingering. Maybe that was the answer after all. Winning wasn't about survival or glory. It was about leaving something that lasted longer than fear. She looked down at her notebook. On the page, she'd drawn the outline of a raven mid-flight, wings open, free. Beneath it, she wrote, "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts." She closed the notebook, stood, and walked toward the edge of the cliff where the sea met the sky. The wind lifted her hair, carrying the scent of salt and freedom. No one watching her would have known who she was, not the ghost she carried, not the truth she revealed, not the silence she broke. And that was how she wanted it. Because for the first time in decades, Jennifer Hayes wasn't a soldier, or a ghost, or a myth. She was just human. And that finally was enough. Cinematic closing narration. for the final 60 seconds of a voiceover video. They said her pin looked fake, that no one had ever earned it. But what she carried wasn't decoration, it was memory. 16 years in the dark, and she never asked for thanks. When the truth finally came, she didn't run from it, she walked straight through it. And in the end, the world remembered not her name, but the silence she broke. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.